This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, did you know we have our own YouTube channel? Yes, it's 2025, and we're just jumping on that bandwagon called YouTube. But it's also more fun, I think, to watch these interviews than just listen to them. Now, I have a face made for radio because I used to be in radio, but my guests do not. And so you want to jump on YouTube and watch your favorite episodes of the PR Podcast as well as listen. Just search for the PR Podcast. Just make sure to put the in front of it. That'll make it easy to find. And check us out there. We post new episodes every week, just the way we post to the audio podcast platforms. We also post to YouTube, so check us out there. Now on with our show for this week. We have a great guest. Doug Simon is the founder and CEO of the award-winning company DS Simon Media, growing his company from self-funded startup with just $2,000 from his father's life insurance policy. DS Simon Media is now a multi-million-dollar company serving top brands in healthcare, technology, travel, financial services, consumer goods, entertainment, retail, nonprofits, and many more. Doug has testified in front of the U.S. Senate as an expert witness on issues affecting public relations, and he's also the host of the award-winning PR's Top Pros Talk video podcast series, which has completed 300 episodes. Doug, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. And I should say, I did know about your YouTube programming on there, and I've watched a few of the episodes, so it's great to be on. I'll also say that you might be following the Ohio State University with the way you talk about your PR podcast, but let's go. It's your show.
Oh, well, thank you for being among the, I don't know how many, count on one hand, viewers there on YouTube, but we appreciate the support. Doug, you have built your business. First of all, it's an amazing business story, right? The way you've really bootstrapped your way up to create this incredibly successful company. Tell us a little bit about getting started before we get into what you do. You know, how'd you get started?
Yeah, well, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was working as at a PR agency as their video producer, and I'd grown that department from about $40,000 to $300,000 a year. And that was long enough ago when that was actually real money on that. But my boss felt that I wasn't good at new business and wanted to hire someone else from Nightly Business Report. And I literally thought, if I'm going to work for a jerk, why not work for one I look at in the mirror in the morning when I shave? So I started that with, very modest plans. I could do maybe 6 projects a year, make $30,000, have time to travel. That was the initial plan.
It sounds like a good plan, but it also sounds like destiny did not cooperate.
No, destiny sort of went past that. And I've been very fortunate. I've learned a lot of important lessons over the years. One of the most important was in year 8. If I just hire good people, the problems seem to take care of themselves. So I've got a fantastic team working side by side with me, and a stable team at that. Average tenure is 9 years at the company. So that really makes it much easier to provide the best service for clients and have the familiarity and joy working with each other as well that shows through.
It's so great. And it's not surprising that you've built the type of business that you've built, having the background that you have. I think a lot of PR people don't have that advantage of having either been in a newsroom or been around reporters in the field or whatever. I mean, having that tangible understanding of kind of how the stuff gets made really helps, does it not?
It definitely was a big help. And I also had a lot of experience with live broadcast television at NBC. I was Bob Costas's talent assistant on NFL Live, which I used when I was starting my business with a letter of recommendation from him. I'm still talking about it nearly 40 years later. So, I
Why
mean, it's
not,
value and
right?
people are nice enough. But I really learned the importance of, and what I loved about it was for live TV, like happens with the media tours when we're getting our clients interviewed, is either it's perfect or it's an F up. for lack of a better expression on that. So you really just have to have it together. Pre-production is so key. And the level of focus with my team, and we have our own studio, multiple broadcast control rooms, level of focus of my team when they're executing these live interviews is really fantastic.
Yeah, there are so many technical pieces to doing a good TV interview. How do you coach clients through, how to execute that good experience in front of a camera, whether it's in a studio, whether it's with an IFB in their ear or whatever?
Yeah, so there are two parts to it. And there's a pre-COVID story and then a COVID story. So before COVID, people were coming into our studio. We were sending satellite trucks out where they were. They were going into studios in their home location, which was actually a more intensive experience on a number of levels. Lights were brighter. It's an environment that you're not used to. So you want to prepare and practice. Post-COVID, by necessity, people were forced to be doing interviews from wherever they were on that, which had the advantage it was a place they were comfortable. And for TV stations, instead of needing a satellite technician on hand to take an interview in, they were all connected online. So that caused significant increase in the number of stations that were willing to take and do these interviews, meaning better results for clients. And there's also some data from our survey that ties in with that, what shows why there's been so much growth in both the need to get on TV news and the opportunity and its effectiveness.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that survey because really wanted to talk about that. And let's talk about the business that you have built now. You
Sure.
have created a reputation and a business built around getting people on TV. How do you do it?
So the key part, and it started initially doing video news releases, video press releases on that. But in the last 30 years, the majority of the work has been through media tours. So we could take someone like yourself, who's an expert in a specific area. You have a story to tell. Our team of in-house media specialists and producers will work with you to craft the story angle that both delivers your organizational message, but also will be of interest to the media and interest to their viewers because those are tied so closely together. So we'll create the pitch, of course, work with the client on that, get their approval, and send that out to the people in the target areas. One of the things that's really changed and evolved, and I should probably go to Satellite Tour 101 before I get into this. So basic gist of it is before going way, way back, and probably most of your audience won't remember this time because I know you've got that whole Gen Z thing nailed with this podcast on that. But people would travel around the country to do media appearances, time consuming, expensive. So no one had the time to do that anymore. So the idea is within a 5 hour period, you can be doing 25 to 30 interviews, one after the other, after the other, after the other. So it takes a level of preparation. Typically, you want to have your approved media pitch. Of course, you want to understand, are there target markets? Are there local angles in different markets that will help you pitch the story effectively? About 3 weeks before the date and time that's specified, you want to start pitching the media so you can build out your lineup in advance. And this is one of the interesting things. I'm part of, media change. There's a lot of noise that there isn't as much TV news as there used to be. Fact's actually the opposite, according to the National Association of Broadcasters. In the last 10 years, the amount of Spanish language local TV news has doubled. The amount of English language local TV news has increased by 30 to 40%. What hasn't increased, which generates the stories, is their staffing. They're more reliant on PR people than ever before. Out of necessity, they have more space to fill with fewer employees doing that work.
Yeah,
So that's a key part.
I remember
Go ahead.
working in newsrooms and the booker was just constant on the phone, right? And I guess today it would be on email, but back then it was on
Yeah,
the phone. The Rolodex was impeccable, and literally it was the first person on the hook got the interview, right? And you're saying that understandably, you're saying that that has changed, and now PR people can almost be in the driver's seat in terms of being able to fill that time.
I wouldn't call it the driver's seat, but in the car seat next to them, because it's really a collaboration on that. It's not like PR is suddenly controlling things. They still need to have good stories, but there's an opportunity to build those trusted relationships. And because, other PR trends where agencies used to be significantly focused on media relations. Now they're less so. That's a smaller part of their total job. So an organization like ours and other in this space, because that's our sole focus, we're working with them every day. So it's really hard to just ramp up and go from zero, like, okay, I'm going to call 50 producers around the country who I've never spoken to try and get 20 different hits, versus what their kids are playing softball and what their schedules are because you're working with them on a daily basis.
Yeah, the relations part of public relations, so important, right?
Sure.
Um, let's talk about what goes into doing a great satellite media tour, or even what goes into doing a great TV interview. You talked
Sure.
a little bit about getting the prep going, 3 weeks out, pitching the story. But I guess first you have to develop the story with the client, right?
Of course, and sometimes clients have specific initiatives they're working on. Frequently, we'll go to them. Many of our clients will work with on multiple project contracts. So at the beginning of the year, we'll go over their strategy, see what they want to do when to maximize bookings. They can also use different spokespeople for each, but let's take it down. You're doing one satellite media tour, which might be most helpful for the audience. So we talked about having the pitch. Another key part of this is what we call the confirmation doc. It goes out the last week before the tour to all the stations that have been booked. And basically, it provides them with a suggested lead in for the segment and specific questions to ask, as well as information about if we have B-roll that will also be showing the names and spellings and titles of all the spokespeople. The key piece of that, and because of the changes we were talking about earlier in broadcast media, basically more show, less people, and trust, they'll generally, more than 90% of them will ask the questions we've provided to them. So a lot of it comes down to working with the client and getting the spokesperson engaged. Here's the suggested questions we're thinking of. Does that create the narrative you want to talk about? And there's certain rules. The opening question should deal with something that's going to catch people's interest and is not as promotional as some of the other pieces. The second question might be something that's going on locally. Maybe it's a data piece that you have locally. The third question is usually the one where you'll be talking about your own thing, sort of the plug, if you will, for lack of a better expression. And the fourth, you'll provide additional information and where people can go to find more information. So that's the typical structure of a media tour. And of course, you plan to have footage mostly that will go along to questions 2 and questions 3, because the first question, they're putting the lower third branding of who they're talking to on there. And you have to coordinate with the station to make sure you're not showing wonderful footage when they have their anchor and your person in a box next to each other. So there's a whole communication. I know you get that from being in the newsroom. And also there's a prep that goes on before each interview. Okay, great job. Now you're going to be speaking to Joe at Good Morning Cincinnati. The local piece that we had highlighted was XYZ. It's going to be a 3.5-minute discussion. They're going to be airing it tomorrow on their morning news show. That kind of briefing, then they're ready to go. And we can get into the structure, how it's physically changed since COVID, because for a while we couldn't all be within 100 feet of each other. So you'd have the spokesperson somewhere there connecting to our control room. We're connecting to the station, but the PR people want to watch. So there's a virtual green room set up, which we still use today. They can be anywhere. They can hear the station questions, watch the response, see the footage that's being rolled in, and even speak to and brief their spokesperson between interviews. We've done multiple pieces where the spokespeople have been in different countries, none of them the United States, and it works.
It's amazing how the technology has evolved over the years, yet the fundamental informational exchange has not, right? It's still
Correct.
that one-on-one, person-to-person conversation. Are there tips
It
that?
might be, if I forgive me for it can be 1-on-2 as well, like a
Oh, sure, of
doctor
course.
patient, for example. But I just want to let people know they can be flexible. Often we'll see a nonprofit with a brand working together on an initiative. So there's lots of different formulas. Another thing that's changed due to COVID, and I promise I'll let you get back to your question, is that you can now feature multiple spokespeople way more easily than you could. So if you've got a group that has a Northwestern US director, a California director, a Texas director for interviews in those locations. You can have a different spokesperson within the same tour, doesn't have to increase the cost. So you're even adding to the benefit of being local with your story.
That's a great point, and something maybe I hadn't even considered is that a satellite media tour just doesn't have to be with one expert. You can localize, because we all know, most news is local. And
Sure.
especially when we're doing these satellite media tours, we are talking about local stations in
Yeah.
local markets. We're not really, we're usually never talking about Good Morning America or the Today Show or
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be a
Um,
different booking. There are some syndicated shows that will carry it, and some networks, like a Sinclair is one, Gray TV is another, where they have multiple stations in the group. So if there's a high profile story, you can get one booking that can generate 40 to 60 hits. And that's usually a good day when that happens.
And what's the reaction of the clients, of the people who are sitting in front of those satellite media tour cameras? When they come off, obviously they're exhausted.
Yeah.
But where's the ROI?
Yeah, well, there's not just an EX exhaustion. Another EX word is exhilarated. They're really happy by the experience. And the people, the ROI is getting people to see your localized message being delivered through someone that they've chosen to tune into on a regular basis. If people who watch local news, and of course now they're watching it digitally, they're watching it in all forms. It's being placed on Instagram, all these different outlets that the stations are distributing the content, which is helping reach a younger audience. But these are people they know and have tuned into again and again and again. And COVID also increased the number of people who are watching local TV news than before, because that's where they're going to get the news they can use. But ROI, it can be very specific and different for different kinds of clients. Sometimes it's awareness, sometimes it's highly targeted. We've started to do more saturation tours where maybe the story's only relevant in 15 cities, or the client has outlets that people can go to, or a specific state. So now we can just focus on that area and generate additional coverage beyond the interviews with media placements as well. So ROI can be, did more people buy your product? Did more people go to your website? Did more people learn? Is this supporting the other PR and advertising efforts you're doing? And that's, caused us to add some different service options. One thing that's been of interest that's new is creating content that's delivered through streaming video on the shows. And what's interesting there, it tends to reach a higher audience in terms of personal net worth, but also because you have to watch it if you want to keep watching your show. 94% of the people are watching the entire video. And it can be highly targeted if you want to reach parents with young children by education, financial well-being, all those things come into play. So it's really become a jumping off point. And I'd be remiss if I didn't forget about the growing buying power of people in the Latino community on that, which is huge. So significant increase in bilingual media tours.
Yeah, you're riffing off a lot of stats here, and I wanted to point out that this is all proprietary research that you've done, right? You have
Sure.
dived into the analytic end of these satellite media tours. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So when we surveyed the producers, we try and check on their pulse. And one of the key things we look at is what's the percentage that are open to being pitched for a story about a brand? This year it was 91%, and that's been the average the last 3 years. So it's consistent that there's that level of openness to being pitched on stories. Sometimes people are hesitant, they don't think they can do it, but clearly anything that you're getting 9 out of 10 people to say yes to, that's an opportunity to get out there. One of the big things that surprises a lot of PR people, and I've been on a soapbox for this, I'll have to get a more current version of being on a soapbox, probably social media for this, is that overwhelmingly these same stations prefer to interview spokespeople who actually work at the organization, whether it's a brand or a nonprofit. It used to be a thought that, oh, we'll get a third-party expert, the viewer won't necessarily know that. The FTC actually tightened its spokesperson rules, where if you're a third party that's been hired and you do a TV interview, okay, if you're a tennis player, you might be able to wear your Nike shirt or Nike hat, but during the interview, you actually have to say, I'm working with XYZ company. You have to make it specific that you are. So stations and COVID really accelerated the trend. You'd be surprised. 85% of the producers prefer to interview someone from within the brand than a third party expert on the topic, which is, to me, that's a huge difference. Now, sometimes you wonder, are the producers just saying this? It's sort of a trust but verify thing. So we did an analysis of the more than 200 satellite media tours that we did last year. There was a 12% increase in bookings when our clients used an in-house spokesperson compared to when they didn't. So that was one of the big findings. Stations are continuing to use Zoom for interviews, 82% of them. So they'll continue to do that in the future. And we said Zoom, it can include Zoom and other proprietary software. We use proprietary software to get the best video quality to be able to send to stations. And so there are different ways to connect, but it's Zoom-like services, if you will. A couple other juicy things that's fun. Now, this was a survey we had done by an outside party. So there were more than 1,000 respondents to it. And can you think of a topic that Republicans and Democrats agree on? And I won't do the Jeopardy theme, but I'll give you a chance. Can you think of a topic that Republicans and Democrats agree on?
The first one that comes to mind for me is infrastructure. I gotta think that people are generally in favor of building stuff that gives out jobs.
Okay, I'm going to give you a credit point for that one. But the one in this context that we surveyed is by an 85% to 15% margin. Both Republicans and Democrats trust their local TV news more than they trust social media. Exact number on that. And
That's something.
yeah, and a big piece of that is local news tends to stay out of the political fray. Before the 2020 election, we'd surveyed stations last year. In September, they were spending less than 12% of their newscasts, 1/8, on political news. And remember, there were local elections everywhere. It wasn't just the national election. Even in October, less than 1/6 of their airtime was being devoted to politics. And we think that's one of the reasons it's such a trusted medium. And there's another reason for that that's interesting, because we ask stations why they do that. Part of it, they know if you're a political junkie, you're going to the cable outlet that aligns with your beliefs rather than watching, Good Morning Austin or Good Morning, fill in the blanks on that. So that's one reason they keep away from it. And that's really helped preserve it as such a trusted medium. And it's really, I would argue, the leading trusted media outlet in the country's local TV news now.
Well, that's reassuring for me to hear because, I shed a tear every time I hear about a newsroom shutting down. And I am a
Right.
product of my local news environment as well. Not only do I work with them very closely, it's probably 90% of what I do, but I'm a product of that local news environment.
Sure.
I came up in local newsrooms around the New York City area. So.
Wonderful. That's great. I'm sure you've got stories to tell. Another piece of the survey is the topic areas that stations are interested in covering, which I think is a pretty cool thing. So, in general, we asked about 13 different topics. So, health and wellness, number one, 76%. And I should add, all 13 more than 50% interest among producers. For the first time, AI made the cut. And the way we look at it, if you've got half the producers open to doing an interview on a specific topic, you're likely going to be able to do a successful media campaign. That's enough of a marketplace. Choose from parenting was at 73, travel up there, personal safety, art and culture. Some of the others, technology, personal finance, and business. That might be a higher number based on what the stock market's been doing of late, but that's a whole sidebar story. Food and beverage, and hopefully it's recovered by the time this is posted for everyone's goodwill who's watching. Retail, consumer goods, education, sports, home improvement are topics of interest. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the changes in healthcare being covered? I think I referenced a little earlier when we were chatting before the show about the reduction in stations with dedicated health producers and health reporters. I'm sure the stations you worked at, I don't know if it was an NBC, Dr. Max Gomez, everyone had their own health producer, their health reporter across the country. Today, that's at 17%. Crazy. And similar
That's a
number for
brutal number.
reporters. It's brutal. And, you know, 3 years ago, it was at 58, 57%. Now it's at 17%. Obviously, COVID gave that an initial boost because that was such a part of coverage. But, on one level, we can be brutal, but if we're going to be PR people trying to do the best job for our clients, it's like, hey, health and wellness is still the number one topic at 76%. Um, but they don't have the team to cover it. So they need your help. And this I really found super interesting. Um, and this has been a change also during COVID. The top three ways they're covering health stories, and this applies to a lot of stories, is an in studio interview or a Zoom or satellite interview. And that's more than the times they're sending a reporter out with a crew to cover a health story. In health, another area that plunged compared to a number of years ago, taking in a network feed, only 29% of that. And I think that's all part of the trend that's carrying over to general coverage as well, in that they want the news to be local. Like you were saying from your time, all news is local on local TV. If they're taking a network feed, that's not local. Their viewers can get that elsewhere. Only 13% were sending a producer and a crew out, when that
Yeah, and
used to
that's
be
a
probably the
function
norm.
of yeah, that's a function of the cuts in the newsroom, right? The fewer
Yeah,
people doing more jobs, and they just don't have enough people and cameras to go around.
yeah. And some other types, the top stories in health, and this had great insight for PR. Mental health was number one at 84% of the people. Women's health, wellness care, children's health were there, medical conditions, men's health, exercise, fitness, diet, nutrition, and definitely a lot of interest. But one of the things like nutraceuticals or pharmaceutical breakthroughs scored lower. So what that says, if you're going to pitch a station a story, don't pitch it as a pharmaceutical breakthrough. Pitch it as, say, a women's health story or a men's health or medical condition care. You'll probably have nearly double the chance of the number of producers being interested in that story, which
Yeah,
I
that's
find
where I
really
was gonna
just
go.
fascinating.
That's where I was gonna go with you, right? And so, how do you take all this terrific information that you found in this report that you published, that you researched? How do you take all this information and translate it to what you're doing for your clients?
And that's really the key. You've got to understand where the producers' mindsets are at these stations in order to be successful. And as I referenced before, there are other things that will, the same story, what gives you a better chance of getting on the air? Can you localize it? It's a huge piece. Is it timely? Is it relevant? Are you tying into the trend? A lot of the basic PR things. But now, compared to when you would send out a video news release or press release in the past, now it can be different for each station because there's local examples. We've done stories on school cleanup projects where a nonprofit was organizing people in different school communities to help clean up their school in that area. And so we knew where the programs were for every station. They would say, oh, is there local schools involved? Yeah, here are three of them. And you can go online and find more of them. So that type of data information makes stations, one, more likely to do it, makes it more likely to resonate with the audience.
And that is the key, finding those things that are going to make sense for any outlet, print, broadcast, otherwise, to say, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, this is important to our audience. That's really the holy grail.
Of course. And one good way to think about it is, for those who've watched TV, and this will be, you remember what would happen before the break? They do a tease coming up after the break, whatever it was. Try and think in terms of what's the tease going to be before they go to break, before your segment. And typically, and this is sort of some insight information, typically they'll come back from a commercial, do traffic, then weather, then do our type of segment. And what will happen is you'll hear the anchor when they do it, because suddenly traffic, okay, great, they're free for a moment. Oh, who do we have next? How do they pronounce their name? Are the questions in the prompter? Great. That's the level of preparedness these anchors have for a lot of these stories. So it's not like you're getting people who are going to be grilling you across anything because they've had no bandwidth to prepare. They just want to know that the information is there for them, is available. And what we find, if a station was even going to do a hatchet job, that doesn't fit the mode of local news. They have enough negativity with their crime stories. So the other stuff is news. You can use upbeat information, helpful information for their viewers. So if they don't want to do it, they're just not going to do it, instead of like bringing you on to trash you. It doesn't fit the vibe of those shows. So it's a super safe space.
What can, final thought here, what can people do to prepare for, maybe it's not a satellite media tour. Maybe it's just like we're talking right now on a Zoom,
Of
right?
course.
Where
Yeah.
a lot of people subject matter experts or other clients might be doing these Zooms. What are things that they can do to better prepare to do an effective interview over a Zoom call or something similar?
Sure. So the first thing is make sure about your audio and video quality. And one of the common mistakes, and forgive me for doing this, I have an adjustable camera stand so I can raise and lower it. Sometimes people do this type of thing where, okay, you're looking at that. It's not really flattering. You want to make sure, and hopefully I can move it back in position or
The
I'll
up
look
the
terrible
nose
for the
shot is
rest of
what
the
it is.
conversation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's like, oh my God, I hope I trimmed my nose hairs before this interview. You don't want to be thinking that way on it. You look better if it's at eye level or slightly above. Then you also want to check the audio connection. Does it sound good? And your internet connection. Do you have an adapter so you can hardwire, plug in to whatever your device you're going to be on? That's going to be the strongest. If you live in a household which might have children or husbands, are they playing high intensity video games at the moment that you're doing the media interview? You might want to say, like, okay, guys, take a chill. Mom's getting interviewed right now. So those are some of the key things. Of course, eye contact with the camera. One thing I like to do, because of course we're so used to wanting to look at the people, I make sure to move the window with the person I'm looking at, talking to, right next to the camera lens. So even though I'm cheating, as I've been doing some, it's not like I have you on the other side where I'm talking like this the whole time when I'm looking at you. So that's the other piece is about the content. Be comfortable, breathe, relax, smile, assuming it's not a devastation type of story that you're doing, but have the appropriate response. People want to feel good about what you're doing. You also feel the power. I illustrated it a moment before. Your knowledge so outstrips the anchors in that specific area. They're trying to get through their show. And they just want to know, is the material there and ready? So it's not like you're going to be tricked, surprised. You just have to be comfortable with your stories. If you can add sort of anecdotes, stories that make it real, that they can feel, that's going to be beneficial. And of course, always mention to refer to them where they can get more information if they're interested in the story.
All brilliant tips there, Doug. Thank you so much, and a great place to conclude our interview. So appreciate you sharing all this with us. Thank you so much.
You
We
got
are
it.
not done. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say we can send you a link if you want to let your viewers download the study on that. We'll make sure to get that to you.
We will definitely put that in the show notes, but we're not done with you yet. We are going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two with your indulgence. Doug, let's start with rapid fire question number one.
Bring
What's
it
your
on.
favorite news source?
My favorite news source, that's a good question. I guess I'm going to say TV news because it's provided me a chance to help pay for my son's wedding in a couple of weeks.
Oh, congratulations. That's great stuff.
Thank you.
Rapid fire question number two. What's your favorite social media platform?
Um, Gosh, LinkedIn.
It's a good one. They're integrating lots more video, right?
Definitely, definitely. And a lot of the content, and for you, your podcast, put it on LinkedIn. We get a lot of feedback from placing content on our LinkedIn channels.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Rapid fire question number three. Coffee or alcohol?
Neither.
Go ahead. What you got?
Okay.
What's in the cup? What's in the mug?
I've likened myself to a sommelier of Gatorade, though I've tried to cut back on sugar. I'm not a big drinker. I will have a Coca-Cola from time to time when I'm going out, but I'm not a drinker. I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm fine sharing too much information, but when I was younger, I was diagnosed with Crohn's. So I made a mental note that coffee and alcohol weren't going to be good for my health long term. So compared to other people who are Crohn's, I'm extremely high performing in life. But that was like a choice that just made sense. Like I'm not anti to them, except if someone's driving, not a huge fan of either burning coffee on themselves. But for me, that's what's worked out best. So sorry to give you a trick answer on that one.
No, that's your answer. That is your
Yeah.
answer. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on the run food?
Slice of pizza.
Oh, anything on the pizza or just plain?
But generally plain. I don't mind eggplant. I'm a purist with Gatorade. I like the lemon lime as well. So I guess pizza I'm the same way.
I love that answer. Rapid fire question number 5, Doug. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
What do I want to be after I finish this career? Possibly teaching others, helping others, sharing knowledge, maybe working in a nonprofit. We'll see what the state of the world is when, someone decides, hey, Doug, we think we should purchase you so you can stop working on that. And then I'll figure it out from there. But, just contributing to society and people, making them happy. Could potentially, not that I'm showing it here, do more stand-up comedy. I've had 4 shows in New York and only bombed once. So that's not a bad percentage.
That is a good point. We didn't get to that in our conversation. Tell us a little bit about that stand-up comedy career.
Sure. So it's much easier to be business funny than it is to be funny on stage. But there were a couple of times I thought I had good stuff. Like I'm odd. Like when the Iraq War started, I was like, oh, that could be some good material to be funny. So I went to a club and it's like, okay, it's open mic night, but it turned out not to be open mic night. There were real comedians there. I ended up behind Jim Gaffigan, who was working there. That's like the first time, but I did okay. I held my own. It wasn't great. Then I had another opportunity to do it. I put a set together that worked really well. And then I had a big birthday and my wife managed to surprise me with a birthday party through multiple ruses to get me there to stand-up comedy club. So when I had to, of course, get up on stage to thank the people, I had some jokes mixed in. I was like, I should put some stuff together. So I won't reveal all my secrets. Then I ran into David Letterman's warm-up guy who trained comics during COVID. We were outside and people were like outside in New York City. And I was like, oh, I should take lessons. And I listened to all of his tips except one, which was don't try and do all of my tips at one point. So for that crowd, late night, no one looked at their phones. No one talked to each other. They paid attention. They just didn't laugh. That was the whole of my game. Did everything right, but didn't make them laugh.
Well, next time you're on a comedy stage, make sure you let us know because we'll promote you on our social media channels.
Cool,
sure.
Yeah. And since you're in the area,
yeah,
it'd be great to see you out there. I need a friendly face to be heckling me.
Oh, we'll heckle. Oh, don't you worry. We'll take care of that part.
I got the vibe already,
Well, Doug, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you and your company online.
Sure. We're at dssimon.com. Like my name, Douglas Stewart, which is a trivia question for the middle name, happened since I was really young when I started. So I wanted to sound older. Like one of Nixon's guys, they all used initials. So I figured DS Simon, people would think I was much older than I actually was at the time. So that's our website. Email me at Doug S, DOUGS, as in Sam, at DSSimonmedia.com. And I love to engage with people in conversation. Also love the people of media ideas that don't necessarily mean work for us. I don't care. Call me up. We love to brainstorm about it.
Sounds great, Doug. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.